Shelby,
Danielle.
here we are for episode 1 of Unheard. This is so exciting.
Woohoo.
I cannot wait to do this podcast with you. And we were thinking about how do you start a podcast? What a thing to do. And something that happened this week made me think, okay, here's the perfect way to get into this. And in our Authentic You program, which we are on week 5 next week, I guess, already out of 6. So in our Authentic You program this week, you asked our members, what does being a black sheep mean to you? What does that actually mean to you? What's your definition of a black sheep? And I loved that question. And then I loved the answers as well. So why don't you tell me what being the black sheep means to you?
I love this question. And it was so fascinating seeing all the different answers because the first thing I've often thought about with being the black sheep is that there's something wrong with it, or there's something wrong with you. And that can sometimes feel like I don't fit in. I'm not part of the group. I don't belong. And ever since you and I came up with the idea of Black Sheep Co., it's really reversed it for me in terms of our black sheepness, our black sheep gifts are something to be celebrated. And so what being a black sheep is, those parts where you feel like the black sheep, it means you have a unique gift. You have something unique about you that it's okay to not fit in, because we all feel like the black sheep in some way, shape, or form. And so it's this like cool part of you that's unique to you. And you know me, I love, uniqueness and individuality. And I think that's a really cool thing. And that's part of who we are as a black sheep.
I love that answer. That's great.
So
We've
Danielle,
had many conversations about this, of course. So,
of course.
yeah.
And let's reverse it. What does a black sheep mean to you?
I think it's exactly what you said. And really, what it comes down to is owning it instead of kind of like hiding those pieces of you that people might not uh, um, might not get on board with right away. And the perfect example of a black sheep is Wednesday Addams. So season 2 of Wednesday is out, and you've watched it, right?
I've watched half of season 2. I haven't watched the second half yet.
Yes. Okay. It's not actually all the way in yet. But even just starting it out, it's so interesting because Wednesday Addams in the first season was, I think she was kind of the outcast, right? She was the black sheep in every sense of it. And yet she just comes in and she just is who she is, and she does not change a thing. And that's brave.
Yeah, she's almost like the outcast of the outcasts. Like the black
Yeah.
sheep of the black sheep.
Yeah. And I mean, her, like, she's so starkly different than anyone. But the interesting thing is, we kind of start to see her get a little bit of popularity in the second season. And I think, it's because people come around to that. They're like, oh, wow, like she owns it and she's not going to conform. And we kind of love it. But the interesting thing about the fact that we love that show so much is that we are intrigued by that. We are intrigued by the black sheep. We are intrigued by people who think a little bit differently. And we can see a little bit of ourselves reflected in that sometimes. Like, you know me, I can be very macabre. Just, I'm interested in dead bodies and things like that. So seeing her just live that and be like, yeah, like that's part of who I am. That's really interesting to me.
Yeah. And even I think that there's something intriguing too, because for many of us, we feel like we have to hide that part of us, that black sheep part of us. And it's so intriguing because she owns it.
Yeah.
She doesn't apologize for it. She doesn't
Never.
hide it. She doesn't try to minimize it. She's like, if you don't like this, get off board, right? Like either you get on board or you don't. Like it's
Yeah. Even her and, like, of course, she and this is really an interesting thing that kinda comes back to you and me as well, is she moves into this dorm with Enid, right? And Enid is the actual opposite. And you just think, wow, these girls are never gonna get along, right? And they don't at first. And it's like a complete misunderstanding. And then they end up being really good friends. I think not even in spite of differences, but because of differences. And you and I have seen that play out in our friendship so many times, right? Not that we're that widely different, but we do have a lot of differences, right? And
Mhm.
it's like instead of it being kind of a point of friction, it's like a point of interest.
So a good example of that is um, you are good at being decisive and making
Mm.
decisions and just being like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go. And you might make a different decision the next week, but you'll make that
Often.
decision. And I sometimes get into the place of indecision because I'm like, well, I have to think of this and this, and I can see all these different angles. And so it can come sometimes stall me out. And if I was friends with someone else who has the same way, like it would be a disaster. We'd never be able to agree on anything. And I
Yes.
mean, not that I never make a decision, I do, but that's something that I appreciate about you is that you can take okay, let's look at it from all these angles, and then here's the decision.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, it's nice to have those outside influences that where someone does think a little bit differently because and sometimes I think you don't know that kind of thing about yourself until you meet someone who is the opposite in that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you can think of as an example of like the opposites?
I don't know why that's a really hard question.
Well, okay. So something else then, I guess, like thinking about another part of it is when you think about being in relationship with someone who maybe views things differently. And I'm not saying this about us, but I'm saying even with like Enid and Wednesday, is sometimes it's easy to dim ourselves. Like Wednesday could have been like the pressure to, around Enid, this bubbly, fun, kind of sparkly, colorful person.
Yes.
She could have started to dim her strength and her like who she is to try and fit in, but she didn't. And I think that
Mhm.
goes back to why we're so fascinated by Wednesday Addams and we're so drawn to her is because she doesn't let that dim. And Enid does the same thing. She doesn't let
Mhm.
Wednesday dim her either. And I think that's a really cool dynamic that they have in the show is that it's showing they're both being authentic to who they are and able to, I don't know if it's like an internal celebration that they each have or something like that, but it's really I think that's a really intriguing thing to see in the show too.
Mhm. It can be really tough. I know that I've struggled in the past with having very different types of friends. And I find myself sometimes falling into a pattern of changing how I approach things a little bit differently based on who I'm hanging out with, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And that in itself is a little bit inauthentic, right? I mean, I think there's a point in the real world where you adjust a little bit, right? And that's not a terrible thing because we all want to be socially accepted, right? We all want to feel comfortable in ourselves around other people, and you don't want to feel self conscious. So you adapt in ways that don't necessarily impact how you're showing up, but like that tiny bit of adaptation is fine. It's just a matter of making sure that you don't go so far that you're really dimming yourself, like you said.
Yeah. And I think to kind of take that even further, because I find I do that too, depending on who I'm with, I'll adapt how I show up. But I
Yeah.
don't think it's about being inauthentic. I think it's different people draw out different parts of us. And so
Mm.
I think it's actually, you have to watch it. You have to make sure you're not like completely changing your personality. But I do think if I think about like different friends and different people in my life that I spend time with, they draw out different parts of me. And I actually think that's a really cool thing because you can't, one person isn't going to be able to draw all of that out, every part of you out. And so it's kind of fun to have different people that can.
I love that you said that because our podcast name is Unheard, and that has like a whole bunch of meanings behind it, right? But one of the things is, I mean, there have been tons of studies done where you end up being friends with people who are just really similar to you, typically, right? So you'll end up with friends who are in the same income group, who are into the same things, even people who look like you. And it's just this social thing that happens, it's this social behavior. So the interesting thing is when you can branch out from that a little bit, you get to experiment a little bit more in who you are. And I think through it also develop a bit more self-awareness of who you are based on that exploration, right? So it's kind of neat. And I think we do that in Black Sheep Co. in general, and Authentic You is give people a space to explore some of that where they wouldn't necessarily do that with their friend group or a partner, because it just has some certain boundaries around it that don't allow for that yet. The idea is that you do become more authentic and bring it back into those relationships and into everywhere in your life, but it allows for that experimentation piece.
Yeah, because sometimes that's where we get into dimming our light with people is because we'll get into a friendship and it's a long-term one and we change and grow, and yet we feel like we have to be the same person when
Yeah.
we get together with those people, and if we try and change, it's like we feel like they're like, "Well, why are you doing that?" or "Why are you being like that?" And that can be, like you said, it can be a very scary thing to
Mhm.
do or a scary place to admit how you're actually feeling.
Exactly. And I always like to think of that as people are trying to protect you, right? You've kind of set some expectations. And a lot of times, if people are not willing to see you change, it's not because they're obstinate and they just don't want success for you, or, they're just digging their heels in just to be difficult. I think it usually comes from a space of like protection and safety. But it can translate to doing the opposite, really, because if you need to change and grow, you need to change and grow. And those voices can be very, very strong. If someone who's close to you is like, nope, no, that's not who you are. It's like that's another reason you need the outside space to experiment with that before you start making those changes and get bad feedback that is just going to keep you stuck in that loop.
And that is something, like you said, that's really cool about Authentic You, is that people are in this space where no one necessarily knows each other. So there is that space to be able to say it. And it was cool in this current program is it kind of I saw it as people shared about a little bit about them and what drew them to the program. It's almost like others got more confidence to be able to say, "Oh, I'm not the only one. I'm not the
Mhm.
only one who feels this way, so I can admit it to this group. It's a safe space, and I'm not going to be seen as the black sheep in this." It goes back to one of our values, this known belonging, is that this is a place, no matter who you are, where you're from, what you're going through, this is a place of belonging.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, and having that space to explore that is so valuable. And the funny thing is, we've said this before in our social videos that there's always kind of a theme in groups. And so it's funny because you have people who come into a room and they're very different people and they're dealing with very different problems, but at the root of it is often very similar things going on. So this group, I don't know if you noticed this, Shelby, but the word unworthiness came up in almost everyone's introduction when we were first getting to know each other in that first session. The word itself came up or some variation of. So it's really cool to see, we're all dealing with very different things, but at the heart of it, our human problems are human and they're pretty common and there's not as many as you think. It's just how it gets expressed can be very, very different.
Mhm. Totally. So here's an invitation is Danielle, you don't have to answer, but I'm gonna say it to you and then we can say it to the audience, is what if you stopped trying to fit in and started owning your Wednesday energy?
Oh, I love owning your Wednesday energy. That's gonna be my tagline.
Yeah.
What would Wednesday Addams do?
What would Wednesday Addams do? Well, and our tagline is make it your own. And this is kind of almost like taking it deeper by looking at a specific character.
Exactly.
All right. So here's a question for you, Danielle. What if you stopped trying to fit in and started owning your Wednesday energy?
What if? What if? I love that question. I love that question. I can't.
Nothing like putting you on the spot to answer something like that, right?
You
So,
always
okay,
put me on
let's
the
talk
spot.
about what is the Wednesday energy?
The Wednesday energy is I am who I am and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. It's a little bit rebellious. It's a little bit, I don't know.
It's like the Wednesday energy is rebellious, but not rebellious. Like I don't think she's doing it to be rebellious. And I think that that's something that we have to keep in mind because the term black sheep can feel rebellious. It can feel like it has some friction to it or yeah, like something that's more like this is done to me, whereas that's not what we're about when we talk about black sheep. Black sheep is about knowing yourself and owning that. And I think what the Wednesday energy is she knows herself and she owns it. And that's
So
the key.
this is interesting because when I say the word rebellious, okay, and this must be the good girl in you coming out because Danielle rebellious, I'm like, yeah, rebellious is a great thing. Rebellious is like, it's like, I know what's right and you can think what you want, right? And I think so that's an interesting thing right there, right? And I always love this because you and I can be on totally the same page, but we're talking about something in a completely different way. And it's all context, right? It's all context. And that's part of this whole thing, I think, is that we all have these different traits and we've all grown up with different expectations. And a lot of those kind of shape who we are and then start to hide our what you could call Wednesday traits, right? It starts to become our personality even though we haven't really chosen it. It's like no, it's chosen us and it's like all shaped through context, and words are the best place to see that. Of course, I'm a nerd about words, but words are the best way to see that because there's so many different connotations. So for me, rebellious is like not necessarily about friction, but it's about conviction.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the definition of rebellious that I know from growing up is that it's wrong. It's bad. It's
Mm.
I yeah, that you shouldn't like if you if you do something that's not within the rules, you're being rebellious, and that's not a
Mhm.
good thing.
Absolutely. I can totally see that. I can totally see that coming out. And this I mean, this is the kind of interesting thing that we wanna talk about, right? And that we want
Mhm.
to, like, dive into is these little.
Well, and that's the definition of words. Like, even when we do the exercises of what are your values? Well, different words are going to mean different things to different people. And so
Mhm.
writing out a definition of this value or this word for you, if you have it as part of your business or part of your life, what does that actually mean? Because if you say it to someone, it's going to mean something different.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah, and one of our other values is following curiosity. And of course, Wednesday's really good at that. She goes off on all these mysteries, right? But she goes after what interests her even when it's really weird. Really weird. And she just owns that, and we all have little weird things too. Actually, we have talked about this recently, our little weird things, because I'm a little obsessed with mushrooms. I really like mushrooms, not eating them. I'm just fascinated by mushrooms, and if we go for a walk, I will stop and, like, look at mushrooms, and it's just kinda my thing. When I go to markets and there's a mushroom stand, like, I don't buy them because I don't cook or anything, but I just wanna look at them and, like, admire them, and I take pictures of them. I just think they look so neat, and they're all so different, and it's just some weird thing that fascinates me. So, have we figured out what your weird thing is, Shelby?
I don't think we ever did.
I don't think we did. I don't think we did either. We tried really hard.
Yeah.
You threw a few things out there, and I was like, That's not weird. That's just you. That's just you."
My weird thing is that I don't have a weird thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe.
And
I
it's
know we'll run into it. I know we'll run into it at some point. We'll be like, "Oh."
That's the thing. Well, and I think some of that goes back to my, like, good girl tendencies is, like, I always learn to, like, color within the lines and, you stay within this, and so it was, like, anything that was different or outside of that, I just kinda, like, honed in, bottled up, I don't know what
Yeah, yeah,
what to say,
bottling.
so
Mhm,
So maybe that's why I don't is because I like even though I am a rebel, I didn't unleash that when I was younger, really until like 6 years ago. So it's like relearning how to approach things and approach life in a different way.
mhm.
And that's maybe why I haven't discovered it yet.
Yeah, and maybe it's not maybe it's not a quirk type thing, right? So, I think we can be different in ways where it's not necessarily a quirk, but you do have you have a very interesting way of looking at the world and relationships. And one thing that I know about you is that you just every single day of your life, you're having like really deep conversations with people about things, and you don't really do surface level stuff. And you're so intentional about it. You're going for coffee with people. I don't know how you go for coffee with people so many times in a week. Like sometimes when you're saying, "Oh, I had this really cool conversation," I'm just like blown away. I'm like, "Wow, like Shelby, I mean, I know you like coffee and I know you like people, but."
You know what? It's a lot less than it used to be. Like I've
Yeah,
really like now it's maybe once a week.
yeah,
Whereas it used to be I would probably go like 3 or 4 times a week with different
yeah.
people. One of my personal values is purposeful connection. And that's why like I I can't go surface with people. Like it drives me kind of batty to like and I think that's why I struggle sometimes with those really big networking things is because I don't wanna go surface. I'd rather have, like, a smaller group and be more intentional about the conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're great with a small group, as we know from Authentic You.
I do
Yeah.
like it.
Okay, so a challenge for us and for anyone who's listening. Identify one thing that you've been hiding and ask yourself, what would Wednesday do? Is there anything you've been hiding, Shelby? And I actually don't like the word hiding. It makes it sound like you're like doing something wrong. And I know that doesn't appeal to your good girl sentiments, but
Um, no, I don't think hiding is about being a good girl or not. I think hiding is, like, feeling like you can't acknowledge some
Mm,
part of
yeah.
you, and I think oh, man, I could go into a long conversation about this. I had a conversation with my therapist about this kinda thing this week, is that, um, I've started asking myself, "Well, what do I want?" I can be very accommodating to the point of, like, not thinking about what I want in the situation, and so I think that's what I've been hiding,
Mm,
and
yes.
almost like hiding from myself
Okay.
in a
All
way.
right.
So I'm still, like, digging into this, but it's a very interesting thing to consider and to notice, and that's the key, I think, with this question or this challenge is the noticing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Just noticing. And I think that's a lot of just everything that we do with any kind of personal growth journey, right? Is the more you know about yourself, the more you start to understand things like, what do I want? And why am I not getting it? And then the practicality of how do I go get it?
Yeah.
But it all starts with you have to know what's working and what's not working.
It's like so an example of this. So this is a good way to notice this for anyone who's trying to ask this question is my road rage. And it doesn't always come up, but it is for some reason when I'm driving, there's something about it that is a release for me. And so over the
Mhm.
last number of years, I've started when I start feeling the road rage, I'll ask myself, okay, what is bothering me? Where is this coming from? Because that's often where I'm hiding or something I'm avoiding. And by asking, where is this coming from? I have to face something in myself that I maybe otherwise wouldn't notice or would just kind of brush off and let it bottle up. So if there's something that you're doing that you're getting frustrated with or that it's an unusual behavior, ask yourself the question, where is this stemming from?
Yes, that's one of our staircase case questions, actually. So, like, our staircase questions are like, staircase, how, like, going deeper, going, like, getting into it. Um, and we ask those in our newsletter every week. And one of our first staircase questions was actually, what frustrates you about other people? And we talk about that in Authentic You as well, because it is such a good reflection question. And the more that I ask this, so when I'm feeling frustrated with someone else, I can almost always now trace it back to something to do with me. It really has nothing to do with somebody else. It has everything to do with me. And that's not to say like you can, you know, be okay with bad behavior from other people and that kind of thing, but you can get an insight from, okay, this is driving me wild. Why is that? And then dive a little deeper. And you can almost always come out with something that it gives you a little bit of perspective on the situation as well. So that's the other bonus there is it can kind of bring you out of that sometimes. Like even when you're driving and you think, this is frustrating me. Why is this frustrating me? I think a lot of times you can say, why, right? I mean, for me, road rage. A lot of times when I ask that question and I kind of come back and step out of it and say, okay, what about this is bothering me? I get really upset that other people just don't seem to be paying attention to what they're doing. And for me, it's just like a thing where it's like, it comes back to you have to be like, if you're doing something, you have to be doing it. Why are you half-assing this? And then
Fully pay attention to driving while you're driving.
I mean, I think that's just a given, but clearly like 95% of the population doesn't. So,
See, the hard part with that for me is I know there are times where I'm thinking about something else and I have something else on my mind. And so I probably cause road rage in someone else sometimes. And
absolutely.
so that's why I'm like, okay,
But
what
again,
is
that
that?
gives me that opportunity to think, am I being a little bit hypocritical and am I being a little bit too hard on others? Or, is there a way that I can soften this? And often just like coming to that realization softens it in the first place, right? Because I'm like, wow, like when I'm having an off day and I'm not paying attention, or if I had a kid in the back seat talking to me, I would want a little bit of grace. And so again, just asking that question is what makes you circle around to that and makes it so much more manageable. So
I had a good distraction today. I was driving home and I had to go to the bathroom so bad.
I hate when that happens.
And I'm like, I'm sure I'm being a terrible driver right now because that's all I could think about.
You know what? That is so funny because I also had a moment today where I thought I'm being a really bad driver. And it's because I've had a really busy week and I'm doing everything in a rush. Even though I had tons of time, I I still felt like I had to be in a rush. And that comes through in something like driving, right? It comes through in everything. I mean, I've been breaking things. I broke a glass yesterday, but just because I was trying to unload the dishwasher as quickly as humanly possible, right? And that's when those things happen and things get broken. So, yeah,
Interesting.
we
Well,
can learn a
that
lot.
is
We can learn a
something,
lot from our driving habits, Shelby.
right?
This
I'm
podcast
sure.
is just going to be to assess our driving habits and road rage.
I'm sure we'll talk about it again in the future.
Oh,
This will
you
be a
will hear.
common.
Shelby's road rage is a common thread in
Yeah.
what we talk about. So, and I love it because I mean, you have told the story before so many times of how and I know this because I felt the same way when I first got in a car with you. It's really unexpected because you're a very calm, accommodating person. And when you get in a car and all of a sudden Shelby's like gripping the steering wheel and leaning forward and screaming, you're like, Am, did did I step into an alternate universe? Like, there's something about this car. Like, is this the DeLorean, but for like different universes where Shelby is not Shelby?
A little bit of a personality transplant. Yeah,
It
I remember one of my first jobs, I had my boss and boss's boss drive with me. We were going for coffee or something, and I was always seen as nice Shelby.
Mhm.
And we get into my car and we're driving to Starbucks, and of course, I didn't even think I was doing it that much. Like I wasn't like, I'll talk to other cars and stuff, but for whatever reason they saw it and my boss's boss was like, "Oh my goodness, I love this Shelby." She got to see a
That's
different side of
good.
me.
That's good validation too, because it's like it shows a little bit of that intensity that maybe you weren't showing at work, right? And it's kind of like, and it gives people that little bit of like looking at you a little bit differently and seeing you as a more like fully well-rounded person with like the quirks and the flaws and the like just interesting pieces of you. And I think a lot of times you kind of expect when that sort of thing comes out that people will be like, oh, like I didn't know, right? But that's not always the case. Sometimes people are like, glad to see those little bits of you that especially if they make you a little bit more human, right? Because it's like sometimes we can be surface level with people looking in and think, "Oh, like that person's so polished and perfect." And you're not the example there, but I'm sure a lot of people look at you and think Shelby is that like really polished, perfect example of a human being. And it's like, it's humanizing to know that you have the quirks and you have the flaws and you have the, intensity that people don't see all the time, but it is there.
And the interesting thing with that is, like, I don't it's not anything intentional. I don't try to come across as polished or perfect or anything like that, like, not at all, because inside, I got a lot going on, and it's so fascinating to me um, how we feel on the inside can be very different from how we like, what we put out in the world and how we come across.
That is so true. Yeah. Yeah, what's going on internally does not always reflect what goes on externally. I mean, even before we started recording, you mentioned you sat down with someone who said, "Oh, between you and Danielle, you're the one," or sorry, Danielle is the girly one. And we both had a good laugh about that, right? Because like that's the last thing that I would think, and that's also the last thing I would think other people would see. And it's such a weird moment when you can see yourself through someone else's eyes and there's a little bit of a disconnect as well, and you're like, "I don't know." And then you start thinking about it, right? It's like, now I'm gonna go through my week and be like, "Okay, oh, well, maybe he thinks I'm the girlier one because of whatever it is," right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so fascinating. There was another example, I'll bring it up probably in a future episode because I can't remember specifically, but there was another example of that we had talked about at one point, but it'll
With
come to me
with the 2
eventually.
of us?
Um, it was with you and what was it? It was like feeling very aggressive towards something or um you I can't remember, but it was you saw yourself different than how I did.
Oh, I do know what you're talking about. I can remember the conversation without remembering it also, so that's great. We
I know, I'm
clearly it was
really
like an early morning conversation, one of our many early morning conversations where we were not fully awake yet.
yeah, I think it was with someone else, though. I think there was a third person in this conversation, and you were talking about being very it'll come to us. We'll share it in a future
It'll come up again for
episode
sure.
once we remember it.
Yeah, it'll come up again for sure. Yes. All
Awesome.
right.
Well,
Well,
Danielle, what would Wednesday do?
what would Wednesday do? Wednesday would just be openly herself and not hide the little pieces of her. So that's what we're gonna do, or try to.
Yeah,
You can only ever
we're gonna
try
practice
to
it.
come closer. Yeah, practice. I like
It's a
that.
practice. Yeah,
Yeah. Practice starts with noticing, ends with changing actions, right?
yeah,
Amazing.
amazing.
Well, thanks for this chat about Wednesday Addams, our favorite
Yeah.
character right now.
I love it.
All right. Peace
Okay.
out.
Peace out.